President Trump promises a federal response to the deadly shootings in El Paso and Dayton, and the Senate GOP is warming up to the idea of a red flag bill, but House Democrats want a lot more.
Plus, Mitch McConnell facing a little bit of a backlash. Joining us with his insights on all of these things is the Hill's editor-in-chief, Bob Cusack. Great to see you, sir.
Good morning.
So I was in Fancy Farm in Kentucky where Mitch McConnell spoke, and there were a bunch of things that happened there that got some attention. There was the AOC cutout, he made the graveyard with tombstones that has political opponents on. But also, while he was speaking, the crowd was chanting Moscow Mitch so loud that you could not even hear what he was saying, which got a lot of attention as well. There's a lot of energy on the Democratic side around frustration that McConnell has not done anything on election security. So what's going on there?
Well, Republicans are now pushing back on that because I don't think they did a very good job of explaining why they weren't acting on it. They actually did pass other legislation that was bipartisan by a voice vote. It got no attention, that you have to report something to the FBI. Overall, Mitch McConnell is certainly a target, but as you know, he's not popular in Kentucky.
No, he's not.
But he runs great campaigns. He's going to have a ton of resources. And it's a tough state for a Democrat to take him out.
He built the machine.
Yeah. He has consistently the worst popularity rating of all senators among his own constituents. But he literally built the Republican Party in Kentucky.
I think he will be under pressure because, you know, you've had some senators recently, like Orrin Hatch, say, this is my last run. Now, as majority leader, I don't think he wants to say that because then he'd be a lame duck. But he's in his late 70s and he just had a fall. So I think he'll be under pressure to at least answer that in a debate. But is he the favorite in that race? Absolutely.
Yeah, I think so too. Bob, there's also these new ads run by, I think it's Bill Kristol's group, about election security against Mitch McConnell for blocking the vote. What is the calculus of McConnell and some of the other Senate GOP leaders on blocking this bill?
Well, this is risky for Republicans, I think, because Mitch McConnell has said in 2018 there was no interference. However, at the same time, Mike Pompeo and other Trump administration officials say, well, they're going to continue to try to mess with our presidential elections for the next 50 years. So,
of course,
you know, he's saying that the Trump administration did a better job than the Obama administration, but what if there is interference in 2020? And that's likely. So he's saying Democrats are just playing politics. We don't need to pass legislation. And certainly I think this is going to come up in whoever Trump picks for his DNI to replace Dan Coats.
Yeah,
there's also this new case about a Twitter ban. So this is obscure, but basically Twitter has locked the account for McConnell's campaign after it shared a video of protesters having a rant outside of his home. So he shared a video being like, oh, look at all these people who are protesting against me. And then Twitter has locked that video and requested that it be taken down.
Because I think there was bad language.
Because there was bad language. I mean, it's not the first time bad language.
It's been on
Twitter. Bad language on Twitter. I mean, they're alleging that it's a bias because they want to put out that video to show people what the protests are actually like. The McConnell campaign is going to war with Twitter over this. What is the expected fallout?
Well, these tech companies are in, I think, a tough position because you have the First Amendment, and what do you ban and what do you not? What do you lock? What do you not? At the same time, if you try to automate it, then you're going to have these outliers like this one, which seems a bit silly. And overall, and now Republicans are firing back, both the campaign arm of the House and Senate. I mean, they're going to war with Twitter.
Yeah, they're saying they're not going to buy ads, which is actually quite significant.
That's a big deal. So, and I think
not a good move on their part.
But it's kind of a lose-lose. It's a lose for Twitter, but it's also a lose for Republicans. So I think they'll probably come to some situation. But, you know, Trump is working on an executive order to go after anti-conservative bias with these tech companies. So they're under the gun.
But I mean, we don't have to get too much into the weeds for this, but the truth is that what can you actually do absent of a federal commission setting standards for social media companies? Not even a no Republican president, I don't even think a Democratic president would endorse that because of just how much interference it would take in terms of setting a standard in a private company. Do we have something like that?
No, and I think that would be troublesome. I mean, same thing for like a journalism board. Okay, who's on the board of what's journalism and what's not? That's, I think, a slippery slope.
But his American public has so much confidence that this administration would handle it flawlessly. Don't worry, guys.
Exactly.
It'll be fine.
That's the main thing when it comes to these executive orders, which is, on some point, the president's latitude and authority is quite big. But whenever it comes to a private company like this one, these aren't coal mines where you're trying to get somebody to go back to work. It's like, how do you enforce? Does the federal government have any impact on the compliance division of a tech company?
Right. Setting standards of speech.
And they play a big role, as we've seen in prior elections, and certainly Russia with Facebook. I mean, they play a big role in deciding elections, and that's what politicians are freaked out by.
Yeah, and they should be.
They should be. We all should be.
Right.
Meanwhile, of course, we are still grappling with the aftermath of those horrific shootings last weekend, and there's been a lot of pressure, of course, on Republicans to actually do something about gun safety. And it looks like the president is somewhat responsive to that. Let's take a listen to what he's had to say, and then there's tweets this morning we'll also talk about.
Well, I'm looking to do background checks. I think background checks are important. I don't want to put guns into the hands of mentally unstable people or people with rage or hate, sick people. I don't want to. I'm all in favor of it.
So, Bob, the president also tweeted this morning that he's looking at various background checks. He wants to expand background checks. However, the NRA came out with a statement yesterday saying that they will oppose any they called it restrictions on gun ownership. We don't know exactly what that means. They're leaving themselves some leeway. What do you think will actually happen?
Well, I do think Trump is under pressure that he wants to do something, and I think he does want to do something. However, the NRA stood by him throughout his presidential election while others were abandoning him. So he remembers that. They have been loyal to him. They've been having some problems at the executive level. They're getting sued, blah, blah, blah. So I do think that this red flag legislation could move in the Senate. But Schumer and Pelosi have said, well, basically, that's not good enough.
Right.
So, but are Democrats going to vote against this red flag bill? Now, I was on the Gun Owners of America website yesterday, which is a harder line.
We know them.
They're not big fans of the red flag at all.
Yeah.
So they're going to oppose that. And will there be enough votes in the Senate to even pass that? So I think you're looking at a potential of a conference that you have two very different bills, even if we get to that point, because in 2 weeks, are we going to even be talking about this issue?
And then, the president may well move on. I mean, his history here is so interesting because it's not like, the Second Amendment. He's a New York City guy.
He actually has a concealed carry. He has a New York City concealed carry, which costs like $10,000 to get.
That's funny.
Fact. Yeah, something like him and Howard Stern.
But this is one of those political maneuvers that he made during the campaign to win the support of an important constituency, and that his son sort of brokered. So it's interesting to see him, be a Republican who may be a little bit more flexible on this issue when he did have their such strong support.
Yeah, and he broke what the NRA was saying somewhat, in saying a terrorist shouldn't be able to get a gun. Also banned bump stocks. So I think he wants to say in 2020, I banned bump stocks, and I did maybe red flags, and I did something. But Democrats may say, no, we're not going to let you say that. And certainly I don't think the House Democrats and the liberal base is going to give him a victory on something that's relatively small.
Yeah, and the thing is, I get the NRA's objection here, because the thing is with the red flag law is that the Second Amendment makes it so that you have to provide due process, which is, what does that mean? I mean, even if this red flag law were to pass muster, it could get struck down in the courts based on this due process part. It's something that a lot of us just don't really understand, is that whenever you are literally given a right to have a firearm, that it just engages a lockstep of a lot of laws which are very difficult to overcome.
And you have, I mean, a lot of people in this country have mental health issues. They take medication.
Right.
Where do you draw the line of where you don't deserve a gun because you're too mentally ill?
Right. If you say that, I mean, that's, exactly. It's something immediately will get challenged in court by the GOA or something like that. And you know what? We have a Second Amendment in this country. If you don't like it, you probably have to change the Constitution.
But Republicans in suburban districts, and we've seen a couple flip on background checks recently, and assault weapon ban, I think that's one that you're going to see almost 200 co-sponsors now in the House. And just this week, 5 Democrats added their name, and a couple of them, including Josh Gottheimer from New Jersey, from Trump districts. So the momentum is to do something, but will they get anything done?
Well, we also have this new piece over at The Hill from Jordan Carney talking about McConnell and allies leaning into a Twitter, media war. What is going on in terms of the war with the media?
I think this is a good issue for Republicans because, you've seen a lot of these Silicon Valley companies, they're trying to hire more conservatives because they have been viewed certainly as more left-leaning. I think that's a smart move. We've seen these Silicon Valley companies come into D.C. and talk to conservatives, have dinner with them, hire people. But I do think that certainly the base, and certainly Trump is fanning this flame, that these companies are against Republicans. And basically the us versus them, I think, is a good thing, and calling them out on kind of things that are, why did you ban us? Why did you give us a strike? That's a winning issue.
I also think it's interesting, though, that we were talking here yesterday about how Democrats are also seizing on a war with the media strategy. I remember there was a criticism of NBC News as raising the hands, and they're like, this is what's wrong with the format. Bernie Sanders, no fan of the media, criticizes them all the time.
I mean,
it's becoming kind of a bipartisan thing at this point.
Criticism of the media, in fairness.
Yeah. Right, but at the same time, when like Bernie Sanders calls out Jake Tapper and says that's a Republican talking about, now that works, but he's just asking a question, you know, and certainly.
I'm not saying it's fair, but I'm saying it's good politics.
It's very good politics because it always triggers applause, and certainly. But I do think that the media took a lot of hell for 2016, both Democrats and Republicans blaming the media for what happened or didn't happen.
Yeah,
I remember
CNN was, in my view, so complicit in Trump's rise. I mean, they all loved the reality show. They were all about it, and still are to this day, frankly.
It's funny, too, because I remember, Marco Rubio, breakout moment, I think was the first or second debate. He's like, the greatest ally the Democrats have is the mainstream. He brought the House down. And I was like, wow. And then Trump pretty much seized on it.
Well, over decades, Republicans have been amazing at working the refs and convincing the public that there's this liberal media bias, and now they're doing the same thing with tech platforms. Is essentially what's happening.
It's the same. You're exactly right. It's the same game plan.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Bob. We appreciate it.
Have a great weekend.
You too.
Next on Rising, Iowa congressional candidate J.D. Scholten says his race is night and day compared to last time. He ran against incumbent Congressman Steve King.
He discusses his strategy this time around and why he says people finally started paying attention to Congressman King's rhetoric in the district when Rising continues.